It's amazing how something so small, so ordinary, can hide such a remarkable story. A single US dime, tossed into a pocket or left forgotten in a change jar, can sometimes be worth thousands of dollars, and most people would never know it. Take the 1975 US 1-dime coin, for example. On the surface, it looks like any other Roosevelt dime, clad in copper and nickel, bearing the same familiar portrait and reverse torch design we've all seen 1,000 times. But hidden within this year's production is a fascinating tale of rare minting errors, unusual planchets, and transitional anomalies that transformed a few of these seemingly common coins into coveted treasures worth more than their weight in gold. It all begins with the U.S. Mint's production in the mid-1970s, a time of transition and modernity. By 1975, the Mint was well into producing copper-nickel-clad dimes, a change from the 90% silver coins that ended in 1964. Philadelphia and Denver churned out millions of these dimes for circulation, while San Francisco focused on proof coinage for collectors. But something unexpected slipped through the cracks that year. Among the many proof sets produced at San Francisco, a handful of 1,975 proof dimes were struck without their intended date, or more specifically, with the wrong one. These are the famous 1975 No-S proof dimes. Meant to display the distinctive San Francisco mint mark, these proof coins somehow went out without it, due to a die mix-up during production. Only a few examples have ever been discovered, and they are considered among the most important modern rarities in American coinage. To truly understand why this is such a big deal, you have to appreciate the precision of proof coin production. At San Francisco, proof coins are struck with specially polished dies, often twice, to achieve a mirror-like finish and razor-sharp details. Every step of the process is controlled to perfection, which is why errors on proof coins are so rare, and so valuable. In 1975, the absence of the S mint mark on these proof dimes signaled a major oversight at the Mint. Collectors were quick to recognize just how significant this error was, and the few known examples quickly shot up in value, but the story of the 1975 dime doesn't end there. That same year, transitional errors and planchet mistakes also made their way into circulation. During a time when leftover planchets and experimental blanks were occasionally fed into presses by accident, a few dimes ended up struck on foreign planchets, smaller, lighter, or made of a different metal than intended. One example of a 1975 dime was struck on a copper planchet intended for a penny, giving it a strange reddish color and lighter weight. Another example appeared on a 10-cent planchet intended for another country's coinage. These kinds of errors are called wrong planchet strikes, and they are a favorite of error coin collectors. Because they were never meant to exist and occurred by pure happenstance, they are exceedingly rare, and each is unique. The 1975 dime also has its share of double die errors. The double die obverse variety is particularly sought after, where the letters in Liberty or the numbers in the date show a clear doubling when viewed under magnification. These doubling errors happen when the die itself is improperly hubbed, resulting in a kind of shadow or echo on each coin it strikes. And because dies can produce thousands of coins before being retired, a double die error can affect an entire small run of coins, creating a minor rarity that sharp-eyed collectors can hunt for in pocket change even today. Auction records tell the rest of the story, and it's a compelling one. In 2011, a pristine 1975 No-S proof dime sold at auction for an incredible $349,600. In another sale, a slightly lower-graded example still fetched over $200,000. Even some of the more ordinary errors, like a double die or wrong planchet example, have brought in anywhere from $3,000 to $10,000 depending on condition. A dramatic copper penny planchet error from 1975 sold privately for over $7,500, not bad for a coin worth only a dime on paper. And at heritage auctions, a superbly preserved 1975 dime struck on a foreign planchet realized $5,875 after spirited bidding. These numbers illustrate just how eager collectors are to own even a small piece of this year's mysterious and fascinating production anomalies, but perhaps the most magical part of this story is that these coins are still out there. Many of these rarities were discovered in proof sets purchased decades ago, tucked away in drawers and safes. Others were pulled from circulation by everyday people who simply noticed something odd about their change. One collector in Michigan spotted a strange-looking dime while paying for coffee. It turned out to be a double die obverse worth nearly $4,000. Another young collector in California bought a proof set from a flea market and was shocked to find the elusive No-S dime sitting in the plastic case. That coin later sold at auction for 6 figures, changing his life overnight. These stories remind us that numismatics is not just about the coins themselves, but about the thrill of discovery, the feeling that you might find a hidden gem where no one else thought to look. The history of the Roosevelt dime also adds to the allure. First introduced in 1946 to honor President Franklin D. Roosevelt after his death the previous year, the dime has remained remarkably consistent in design for nearly 8 decades. But within that consistency lie countless stories of mistakes, oversights, and tiny miracles, from misstruck proofs to double dies to transitional planchets, that make collecting Roosevelt dimes an adventure. And among all the years, 1975 stands out as one of the most intriguing. So what should you do if you're inspired to check your own coins? Start with your proof sets, especially those purchased in the mid-1970s. Look carefully for the mint mark, or lack thereof, on your 1975 dime. If it's missing, you may have struck gold. Examine your circulated dimes, too. Use a magnifier to check for doubling on the obverse, or weigh them to see if the planchet is wrong. And if you're ever unsure, consider having your coin evaluated by a professional grading service. The peace of mind, and potential payoff, can be worth it. In the end, the story of the 1975 US 1 dime coin is about more than just money. It's about history, craftsmanship, and the surprises that life sometimes hides in the smallest of places. Whether you're a seasoned numismatist or just someone who enjoys the stories behind everyday objects, this little coin reminds us that treasures are often closer than we think, waiting patiently in our pockets, change jars, or family collections to be discovered. So go ahead, take a closer look at your coins tonight. Who knows what incredible story you might find hiding in your own hands? Have you ever spent a dime without even looking at it? That tiny, silver-colored coin we drop into vending machines or toss into tip jars almost without thinking can sometimes hold a secret worth thousands of dollars. Take the 1981 US 1 dime coin, for example. It's a coin so ordinary most people wouldn't give it a second glance. Yet some rare examples of this dime, because of unusual minting errors, wrong planchets, and astonishing double die anomalies, have become hidden treasures waiting to be discovered. What you thought was just 10 cents could actually change your life. It's 1981. America is entering a new decade full of change, optimism, and uncertainty. At the Denver Mint, workers are striking millions upon millions of Roosevelt dimes, each bearing that proud portrait of FDR, each destined to rattle around in cash registers and pockets across the country. The Roosevelt dime itself had been introduced in 1946 to honor President Franklin D. Roosevelt's fight against polio and his leadership through the Great Depression and World War II. For decades, the design remained unchanged, dignified, simple, and reliable. By 1981, the dimes being struck at Denver were clad coins, a copper core sandwiched between 2 layers of nickel, but even in the highly regulated, mechanically precise world of the U.S. Mint, mistakes happen. And those mistakes are where the magic of numismatics really begins. Among the countless 1981 dimes struck that year, a few left the mint far from ordinary. One of the most intriguing errors to come out of the Denver Mint in 1981 involved transitional and wrong planchet strikes. A planchet is the blank metal disc that becomes a coin. In rare cases, a press operator might inadvertently feed a leftover or foreign planchet into the press. Imagine a dime struck on a copper penny planchet, slightly reddish, slightly smaller or lighter than a normal dime. Or even more exotic, a dime struck on a planchet meant for a foreign coin, such as a Canadian 10-cent blank, producing subtle differences in weight, thickness, and tone. These so-called wrong planchet errors are highly prized by collectors because each one is a unique accident, impossible to reproduce and incredibly rare. Then there are the double die errors. The 1981 Roosevelt dime is known to exist with dramatic doubling on the obverse, most visible in the word liberty, the motto "In God We Trust," and sometimes in the date itself. These double dies happen when the hub and die don't align properly during the die creation process, producing a distinct, shadow-like doubling effect. Unlike common mechanical doubling caused by a loose press, a true double die is permanent on the die and therefore transferred to every coin it strikes until the die is replaced. Sharp-eyed collectors began to notice these doubled 1981 D dimes showing up in circulation, pulling them from rolls and change jars, marveling at how something so subtle could command such value. Even proof coins have their own story in 1981. While Denver didn't produce proofs, those came from San Francisco. It's worth noting that 1981 was one of the last years proof sets were struck with Type 1 and Type 2 reverse designs. Type 2 proofs, with clearer, sharper lettering on the reverse, are much scarcer than Type 1s and have long been sought after by collectors assembling complete sets. Though not directly tied to Denver, this bit of history adds another layer of intrigue to the year as a whole. Auction records show just how much excitement these rare 1981 D dimes generate. At a major auction in Dallas, an MS-67 1981 D dime with a pronounced double die obverse fetched more than $3,800 after fierce bidding. Another example, struck on a copper penny planchet and weighing in well below the standard 2.27 grams, sold privately for nearly $5,500. Even lesser-known varieties, like off-center strikes or partial collar errors from 1981 D, routinely sell for hundreds to thousands depending on their condition and severity of the error. But beyond the numbers and the auctions, there's something almost magical about finding one of these coins yourself. One collector tells the story of buying a roll of dimes from a bank just to fill an afternoon, and finding a 1981 D wrong planchet error nestled halfway through the roll. Another recounts spotting a double die 1981 D while sorting through pocket change late one night, the faint doubling just catching the light under a magnifying glass. For these collectors, the thrill of discovery outweighs even the monetary value. It's a link to history, a reminder that even in our modern world, accidents and artistry still slip through the cracks. The Roosevelt dime has always carried a sense of nostalgia for many Americans. For some, it reminds them of saving coins in a jar to buy something special. For others, it's the familiar sound of dimes clinking on a diner counter. And now, it's also the possibility that something extraordinary could be hiding in plain sight. So what should you do with this knowledge? Start by pulling out your old change jars, coin albums, and proof sets. Pay special attention to your 1981 D dimes. Check for weight irregularities, inspect the obverse for doubling, and see if the metal color seems a little off. If you think you found something unusual, consider having it graded by a reputable service like PCGS or NGC. Authentication and grading can unlock the true potential value of your coin and protect it for years to come. At the end of the day, the story of the 1981 D US dime is more than just numbers and errors. It's a story about paying attention to the little things. It's about finding beauty and value in the overlooked and ordinary. And it's about keeping alive the spirit of collecting, of being curious, of noticing details others miss, of treasuring a piece of history you can hold in your hand. So next time you get a handful of change, don't just spend it without looking. Take a closer look at your dimes. Maybe, just maybe, that little silver coin could hold a big surprise, a rare treasure hiding in plain sight, waiting for someone like you to notice. Because in the world of coins, you never really know what might turn up. What if I told you the humble dime jingling in your pocket could be worth thousands of dollars? You'd probably laugh, thinking about all the times you've tossed a dime into a fountain or slid one into a parking meter. But hidden among these everyday coins are extraordinary rarities, like the 1995 D US 1 dime coin, that have stunned collectors and casual finders alike with their value. Minting errors, unusual planchets, and fascinating transitional anomalies have turned what should have been just another coin into a coveted treasure, waiting to be discovered by someone who dares to look a little closer. The year was 1995. America was buzzing with new technology, the economy was booming, and the Denver Mint was churning out millions of coins every day. Roosevelt dimes rolled off the presses in incredible numbers, each bearing the familiar profile of Franklin D. Roosevelt, a tribute that began in 1946 following his passing, honoring his tireless fight against polio and his leadership during some of the nation's darkest days. By 1995, the Roosevelt dime had become an unquestioned staple of U.S. currency, with little thought given to it by most Americans. But at the Denver Mint, even the best machines and skilled hands couldn't guarantee perfection. Among the millions of dimes minted that year, a small handful emerged with errors so unusual that they transformed the coin's value dramatically. One of the most intriguing comes in the form of a wrong planchet error. Planchets are simply the blank metal discs that get struck into coins. Every denomination has its own standard planchet, but sometimes the wrong blank slips into the press. In 1995, a few Roosevelt dimes were struck on planchets meant for other coins, like copper pennies or foreign currency blanks. These coins came out noticeably lighter, or with a reddish tint, or sometimes with odd thickness, subtle but significant. The result was an unintentional masterpiece, and when collectors began to find them, they instantly became highly prized. Even more captivating are the doubled die obverse errors seen in some 1995 D dimes. A doubled die occurs not during the minting of the coin itself, but earlier, during the creation of the die, the steel stamp that impresses the design onto blank planchets. If the hub that imprints the design onto the die shifts slightly between impressions, it leaves behind a faint but unmistakable doubling. When this flawed die is used to strike coins, that doubling appears in areas like the word liberty, the motto "In God We Trust," and the date. Some 1995 D dimes have been found with sharp doubling, giving them an almost ghostly appearance under magnification, an effect collectors consider a hallmark of true rarity. Unlike minor strike imperfections or damage from circulation, a doubled die is part of the coin's DNA, making it a permanent and desirable error. There are also transitional anomalies linked to that era of minting. As technology at the mints evolved, changes to metals, dies, and procedures sometimes resulted in strange hybrids, coins struck with a mix of old and new standards. In some cases, transitional planchets left over from earlier years got struck with 1995 D dies, producing yet another level of collectible oddity. For those who can identify the telltale signs, like the wrong weight, color, or edge, these transitional dimes tell a story of change and oversight. Collectors have long known the thrill of chasing these errors, and some of their stories are as exciting as the coins themselves. One collector in Kansas recalls finding a 1995 D dime with a double die obverse in his pocket change while waiting for a bus. He didn't even notice it at first, but something about the lettering caught his eye. When he brought it to a local coin dealer, the dealer nearly fell out of his chair. The coin was authenticated and later sold at auction for over $3,200. Another collector, buying an unsearched roll of dimes at a flea market just for fun, discovered a wrong planchet error in brilliant uncirculated condition, which went on to fetch nearly $4,500 at auction. Even coins with less dramatic errors, like broad strikes or off-center strikes from the Denver Mint that year, have sold for hundreds and even thousands depending on their condition. The auctions themselves are a spectacle. At a major numismatic event in Orlando, a nearly flawless 1995 D double die dime graded MS-66 crossed the block to the tune of $5,750, a jaw-dropping price for a 10-cent piece. Just months later, another example of a transitional error from that same mint year sold privately for $6,200 to a collector specializing in modern U.S. coinage. Stories like these fuel the hunt and remind us all that rare coins aren't just something from the 1800s, they can be hiding in your pocket right now. The nostalgia of the Roosevelt dime adds to the magic. For generations of Americans, the dime has been a symbol of thrift, savings, and small dreams. Parents remember filling piggy banks with dimes. Veterans recall how much a dime could buy in the post-war years. Even now, there's something satisfying about the delicate, metallic sound of dimes clinking together. And now, there's also the thrilling possibility that your ordinary change could include a piece of history worth far more than its face value. So what can you do to uncover one of these hidden gems? Start by checking your change, yes, even the humble handful of coins you get from the grocery store. Look closely at any 1995 D dimes you find. Examine the obverse under good light or with a magnifier and pay attention to the lettering and date for doubling. Weigh the coin if you can. Wrong planchet errors often have slight but noticeable weight differences. And if you find something unusual, don't spend it, have it looked at by a professional coin dealer or submit it for grading through a reputable service like PCGS or NGC. Authentication and certification can transform an interesting find into a recognized and valued collectible. What makes the story of the 1995 D Roosevelt dime so cinematic, so enduring, is that it reminds us of something bigger, that even the smallest things can hold enormous value if we're willing to look closely. These coins aren't just mistakes. They're artifacts of the human process, moments when the machine slipped, when an operator missed something, when history left a fingerprint for us to find decades later. They carry within them the quiet suspense of hidden treasure, waiting for the right person to notice. So the next time you're tempted to toss a dime aside, or the next time you dump your change into a jar without thinking, stop. Take a closer look. That little dime might not just be worth 10 cents, it could be a story, a piece of history, and a small fortune rolled into one. And isn't that worth a moment of wonder? Go check your coins, your next great discovery could be waiting in the palm of your hand.